College football is back. It is football season, and that means we've got plenty of college football bets to dive into, and we're going to try and cover it all tonight and throughout the college football season. So let's get into it.
It was good, y'all. It's your boy JD6 here with my man. Shout out to KC Sports Authority. Make sure y'all go check that podcast out, man.
You heard the man.
And welcome into another episode of the KC Sports Authority podcast. If this is your first time on the podcast, first off, thank you so much for finding us and taking the time to listen today. Hit that like and subscribe button for me if you can. First time listener, we're excited to have you here. If you're a longtime supporter of the show, again, thank you so much. We're crossing over the 800 subscriber threshold. And if you've been paying attention the last week, you know we've got some big news. We've got a signed jersey giveaway planned as soon as we hit 1,000 subscribers. So if you're new to the show, if you haven't subscribed yet, but you've been watching, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. If you're a KU football fan, mostly. We're doing a Jalen Daniels signed jersey giveaway and a Devin Neal signed jersey giveaway once we cross the 1,000 subscriber threshold. So do us a favor, hit that like and subscribe button below right now, and then go give us a follow on our Twitter page at KCSA Pod to stay up to date with the details of said giveaway. Keegan Russell here. I got Greg with me tonight. Greg, I am pumped for a year or two of college football betting, and I'm pumped to have you back with me. I know we only scratched the surface last year with some of our betting talk. I know we have a lot more planned this year, but are you ready for not just college football season, but football season as a whole?
Yeah, I'm ready for this season. I think, gambling season really starts first week of September all the way through March Madness. So this is a time of year that I just love. And a whole new era of college football, right? We got a 12-team playoff. I'm 43, and I've been screaming for about 35 years. I don't understand why we have March Madness, but college football doesn't want to go that way. Finally, someone woke up. And for people who don't know, we're going to have a 12-team playoff. And the first round, home teams are going to host it, the better seed, and then we're going to roll into the Big Six at neutral sites. It's going to be great.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun betting season. There's a lot of things. There's just a lot of uncertainty this year in college football. So our hope is in this episode and for the next several weeks of college football and into the NFL season, we can give you guys some good betting odds to take a look at and hopefully make you some money. And I didn't pull it up in this one, but if you did happen to catch last year's 2 college football betting episodes we did and some of the NFL stuff, hopefully you made a little bit of money because, Greg, we were correct with some of our predictions. Again, I didn't pull it up, but we did have Jaden Daniels winning the Heisman. And I think at the time he was like plus 600 to plus 800, somewhere in there, give or take. So that was a healthy payout there. You had Washington as one of your sleeper teams to make the college football playoff last year, which, of course, they were in the national championship, won some money there. And I think we had a couple of the conference championship bets correct. So hopefully we can do that again this year, because what we're going to start with for the 2024 college football season is some of the futures odds. We're going to try and touch on the Heisman, touch on conference championships, of course, dive into the college football playoff as a whole, the 12 teams, some of the national championship odds. We'll try and cover as much as we can as we go through. We'll have some single picks, some parlays to throw out there. And then as we get to the end of this episode, we'll talk about some of our week 1 best bets. But before we jump into the actual futures odds themselves, Greg, last year you gave out a little bit of some tips on how you like to approach the betting season. Let's do a quick recap again of the strategy, the basic strategy you like to implement and recommend to all of our listeners out there.
Yeah, look, as you roll into this season, what you got to decide is, hey, am I in this to have fun or am I looking to make a little money? And if you're looking to make a little money, the biggest thing you got to remember is bankroll management. So if you're going to deposit $1,000 into your account, you got to say, all right, what is my normal bet? Is it $20? Is it $50? Me, I'm a $50 base better. So my 1-star play is going to be a $50 bet. If I love a team, it's going to get 3 or 4 stars. So I'll go up to 150, 200. If it's, something that I just think, oh my God, I can't the sports book is so wrong, I'm going to take advantage. Maybe I go 10 times and it's a $500 play for me. And that's how you got to manage your funds, right? And it's all based on what you're comfortable playing with. But that is my number 1 tip, bankroll management.
Yeah, and that is one that I struggle with myself because I'm not consistent in the number of bets I do and the amount I like to do because I'm too scared to go a little strong on there. So my units are usually $10 to $15, but as I develop a potential bankroll this year with some early wins, hopefully that increases. But yeah, I think that's where you said it started last year. It's where it starts this year, bankroll management. And then I think next is you got to start figuring out what is it you want to bet and are looking for, because once you decide the type of bets you want to make, then you got to start paying attention to some of the data that's out there and be able to look at some of the different sports books. So that's what we're going to talk about a little bit tonight. We're going to be specific with some of the bets we're looking to make. So let's start first with our Heisman odds for college football. And I know there's a lot of guys on this list this year. Last year we got Jaden Daniels right. This year there's like 12 guys I think that have a legitimate chance at it. So as I'm pulling this up here, kind of give me your early thoughts on it, and then while you're talking, I'm going to pull up DraftKings here and give you guys a look at some of the odds, and we'll kind of talk about who we like, who our favorite is, and maybe some sleepers.
So when we talk Heisman, right, we know it's probably going to be a quarterback. I mean, that's who dominates this award. And it's normally going to be some of your top teams that got the best shot or best odds to win a national championship, right? So Dylan Gabriel now takes over at Oregon. Oregon is expected to be fantastic. Now I'll give you. I don't think so. So that's just me, and I'll get into that when we get into the Big Ten. I think it's going to be a rude awakening going from the Pac-12 to the Big Ten. I think travel is going to be different for them. They're going to play teams who want to hit you, unlike the Pac-12. It's not going to be this 70 to 60 game. It's going to be a grind it out. And I don't, Dylan Gabriel, middle of the season, end of the season, going to Wisconsin, that's going to be something new. And I don't know. For me, I'm a pass on Dylan Gabriel. I know that's where the money's pouring in on. I then go to Carson Beck in Georgia, plus 190 to win the national championship. He's got experience. He's not going to be rattled in big games. Yeah, he's going to put up numbers. Do I love his odds? Yeah, they're all right. I mean, okay, I'm a pass on yours. My value play by far is Jackson Dart at Ole Miss. And Keegan, you can go ahead because I know you like him too.
So those of you that watched this last year, we had a similar theme, and it was LSU. We had LSU, Jaden Daniels for Heisman. We had LSU as our sleeper team for college football playoff. Now LSU kind of crapped the bed in a couple of their big games that didn't happen. But Jaden Daniels almost ran away with the Heisman throughout the year. And so Jackson Dart for me is that guy this year. I think everything is lined up, even with Quinshon Judkins transferring up to Ohio State. Ole Miss to me feels like a team that is prime to have a big season, and a team with Lane Kiffin that needs to really put themselves on the map. They've been flirting with better teams in SEC play for the last couple of years. And to me, this is kind of put up or shut up. And I think Jackson Dart has the skill set to do that. I think he's going to be showcased in a different manner this year without that star running back. He's still got great guys around him. So I love that pick a lot at, was it plus 1,400 right now? I mean, you're telling me even if you just want to waste $10 to pay out 140, that's not bad at all on a simple play right there. The other one I like a lot too for me though is Jalen Milroe at Alabama, a guy that really broke onto the scene middle of the year and almost caught up to Jaden Daniels. I thought he still had a strong chance at winning a Heisman with some of his play down the stretch. But Alabama, there's a lot of risk there. There's a lot of uncertainty. No Nick Saban, new coaching staff. The SEC's gotten stronger with the additions of Texas and Oklahoma. We've talked real quickly, Ole Miss is better this year. Missouri's a lot better this year. So the SEC is deep again. So how is Alabama going to look as a whole? I'm not sure. But when it comes to on-field play, I still love Jalen Milroe. I think he's, not just throwing the ball through the air, but the running ability, the rushing touchdown ability he can have as they get close to the goal. And he's one of my other strong picks there. I think those are the two that I've kind of circled the most outside of my one I'll give you here in a second, because, of course, as a KC area person, I've got my homer pick. But what else do you like on this Heisman Trophy list?
So if you're looking for a deep sleeper you want to take a flyer on, Cam Rising's in his 38th year at Utah. So I think with his experience, if he stays healthy and they have a good season, I think he could have a shot at 40-1.
Yeah, that's a good chunk payout right there. Again, they're in a new conference. The Big 12 is nationally considered a little weaker this year than in years past. So maybe that helps on the statistical side. I'm not sure how that's going to play out necessarily. I think the Big 12 is still going to be incredibly competitive, as we'll talk about here in a bit. But yeah, I like the Cam Rising pick. I mean, guys that have been around, done it for a while. I mean, I know we didn't see him last year, but a guy that's got a very high ceiling, high expectations, as long as he delivers on it, he'll definitely be fighting for it. I'm obviously going to go local here. I do have several already on KU's quarterback Jalen Daniels at plus 3,500. Again, a guy, as you're saying, with Cam Rising, if he is healthy and plays consistently healthy, I personally think Jalen Daniels is one of the 5 best quarterbacks in college football. Any given Saturday, Thursday, Friday, whenever they play now, I think Jalen Daniels has the arm talent, the athleticism, and he's the guy that opposing defenses have to come up with a game plan for every single play. So he's another guy I, of course, really love as a Jayhawk fan myself. That's another theme you'll see from me coming up here in this episode. But Jalen Daniels is another very strong play I have. If I want to go more realistic, Carson Beck, again, Georgia's, the way they do their offense, you don't really get the strong offensive numbers out of their quarterback position. But another guy that's played long enough now, and I think they still have a lot to play for with this new look SEC. They still want to be the top dog, so maybe he upticks his game. But honestly, I don't really see many bad plays in the top guys that are top 15. Heck, you could probably talk me into, Drew Aller out of Penn State. You could probably talk me into DJ down in Florida State. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of money on Shedeur Sanders in Colorado. All in all, I think you could sprinkle probably 6 different guys here and feel confident at least one of them's going to hit.
Yeah, look, Miami's a big national team, right? National following. So if you're a Canes fan out there and you like Cam Ward 15-1, I think you're getting great value too. Wouldn't shock me at all if they win the ACC. He has a great season and he's on his way to New York.
The one I will say I don't like that he is that high up there is Will Howard at Ohio State. Will Howard, great with K-State, big guy, physical body. I don't know how his play is going to translate to a program of that magnitude. He's never really been in those types of games under that type of pressure. So I would not be surprised if he does not have a strong season, because Ohio State has a lot of pressure this year. Ryan Day, probably his last season if he doesn't win a college football playoff or at least make it to the national championship. So I think there's a lot of pressure there. So I think he's one I would hard pass on. I would pass on Riley Leonard again. I'm not really Notre Dame not being in a strong, not being the typical conference team. I don't like their schedule's okay, but I don't really like him to do anything there. And then there was one other one I was looking at.
Well, you're looking. Well, Keegan has pissed off all the Wildcat fans. I'll give you some help. I think
Avery Johnson.
I think he's got a shot, Will Howard. I do. I think that Ohio State team is good. I think their defense is solid. Obviously, that's a staple for them. But I disagree. I got to say, I think he was in big games in the Big 12, right? You go to Texas, you play at Canton. These are good teams. He's playing in front of fans. Yeah, the shoe is going to be much different, to your point. He's going to go on the road. He's going to play Oregon in the pond. We'll see how he does. But I think he's going to have a good season at Ohio State. And I think Ohio State has a strong chance to win it all.
Yeah, I think as a whole, as a team, yeah, they've still got an impressive wide receiver core. They get the addition of Quinshon Judkins in the transfer portal. Their offense is going to be top notch, and they always have a good defense. I think for me with Will Howard, I want to see it first before I would put money on it. But again, at plus 1,500, and you just want to say, hey, let me throw $10 at somebody. That's not a bad investment there. Anything else, Heisman, before we jump over to conference championships?
No, to your point, I think with a lot of these national programs, you can't go wrong if you want to bet your team at Jackson Dart, Miller, you want Bama, you want Miami, you want Howard at Ohio State, even Leonard at ND. I mean, you want to take a shot on your guy's quarterback, your team's quarterback. I think you're getting good value. It's a good year. It's a good betting year for the Heisman.
Yeah, like I said, I think this year there's just a lot of guys that have a strong argument and a strong case for that Heisman this year. And maybe years past it's 3 guys. This year it feels like 6-7 guys could have a realistic shot.
I agree. And you brought him up already. Sanders out there, he's going to get press. So if they have a good year, which I don't think they will, but Keegan, maybe you do. I
don't think Colorado is going to be good enough for him to get
Me
to
either.
get consideration. I think he'll get the consideration because of name and his dad's the coach. But
Yeah.
as far as on the field, I don't think he's going to have a strong enough case. But let's look at conference championships. Probably not going to dive into any of these smaller ones, but let's go to Big Ten first. New look Big Ten. Kind of a weird looking Big Ten. I think it's odd to see UCLA, USC, Oregon over there. That's just, it just feels wrong. Washington over there as well. What do you make of this new conference? What's your outlook and prediction of this new Big Ten?
So I'll start this way for everyone listening. Take a minute and look at these new conferences because there's going to be a lot. You go, wait, they're in what? And same thing with quarterbacks through the transfer portal. You're going to see people being, wait a sec, he's where? And it happens to me. It takes me a couple of weeks of looking at everything to finally get, all right, here's where everyone's playing. Here's the new conferences. It's a lot. I agree with you. I think there's going to be some adjustments, especially for the West Coast teams. This is going to be some travel. This is going to be new stadiums. The Big Ten is known for physicality. The Pac-12 was not. So if you know the saying, defense wins championships, right? Mm-hmm. So are they going to be able to adjust and play? I mean, when you got a team like Oregon, and it's not this year, but say they go to Penn State eventually, are they going to be able to go to Happy Valley and get a win? Good luck. There is not an off day in this conference anymore. There's just not. Well, maybe.
Yeah, even the lower end of this conference still most weeks have enough pride in their program to be the team that can upset your whole entire season.
Oh, yeah. Purdue or Illinois, they'll get someone every year. Every year.
Yeah. But when I look at this group, I think the one that stands out to me, if I'm not going for an obvious favorite, and a buddy of mine, huge fan of their program, gets very angry when they can't score more than 12 points, 15, 20 points. It's not Iowa, but Penn State is a group I look at this year that could make some damage. Top 25 team, solid defense. Drew Aller's coming in for another year. So hopefully that development shows up on the field. But yeah, plus 500 there as a conference outright. Probably not the best team in the conference. I still think that's Ohio State versus Oregon there. But a team, if you're trying to get just a little bit more value play, could have a chance at winning the conference championship there, in my opinion.
So here's how I see it. Ohio State and Oregon are playing everyone, and it's going to be in Oregon. I think Ohio State's still winning that game. I agree with you 100%. Penn State looks very good value-wise at 5-1. I throw Michigan out. I don't think they're going to be good. USC, no thank you. Iowa's got to win every game 2-1, so I don't know how it's hard for them every year. Wisconsin just hasn't been able to get over the hump, it seems like, in the last 5 years. They always produce good running backs, but they can never just get over the hump, right? So for me, this conference, unfortunately, is chalk. And I don't see a way Ohio State doesn't win it.
Yeah, they're still the safest bet. Just plus 155, you're not going to make a killing there. So if you want the safe bet, I think Ohio State's perfect. If you want to make a little bit of cash, I like Penn State, but Penn State still has to get over the hump of beating Ohio State, which is that massive game on their schedule. But yeah, the rest of the Big Ten, I mean, yes, you could throw some money on Iowa and hope that they get lucky with a couple things falling their way. But this, to me, conference championships, typically the talent rises to the top. The team that's got the most talent typically wins out in the end, unless they drop a weird game during the season that keeps them out of contention. But yeah, Big Ten, feel pretty good there with Ohio State plus 155 as the safe bet. I don't think Oregon's going to come into a new conference and win it the first year. Are they a really good team? Yes, they have one of the probably 5 best quarterbacks in the country, but now they're going up against teams that legitimately know how to play defense, and they're not going to be winning games 45-37 anymore. They're going to be in these tough games where they got to figure out how to get to 24 and hope that they can win that way.
Right. And if you want a reference point, just look at every time they've played Utah the last few years. There you go. I mean, that's what they're going to be up against week in and week out in the Big Ten.
Absolutely. So let's go to Big 12 next. Of course, my neck of the woods here down in Kansas. New look Big 12 as well. You've got Texas and Oklahoma out. You've got some new additions. The former Big 12 team in Colorado is back. You've got Arizona State in here. We had BYU last year in Houston, new additions. UCF's been a newer addition. But you also get Utah and Arizona again this year. So the Big 12 is a completely different look. And I think some of that is definitely displayed in the odds because you've got 2 teams that are relatively close. and then about a chunk of 4 teams that are like that tier 2, but all pretty solid. So again, what is your outlook on this new look Big 12?
For me, this is the conference that is just wide open. Now, I like Utah because they're home. They have a great home field. They play D, right? We all know that. I had mentioned it before. With all jokes aside, this really is Cam Rising's 7th college football season. So experience is obviously there. Kansas State, I just, at that number, I just can't pull the trigger. If I'm going down the board a little bit, it's Oklahoma State. They have the best running back in the country, and they have a great quarterback too, who's Bowman, who's been there forever. Another experienced quarterback in college football, right? Like, so they got some experience and the best running back. Their Achilles heel usually every year is the defense forgets how to play midway through the season for some reason. So they always lose a game or two they're not supposed to. I love Kansas at 9. I love Arizona at 11. This one's the hardest one for me because you got a team sitting at 9.5 to 1. You got a team sitting at 11 to 1 that I'm going, they can easily win this conference. So I love Utah, but it's very hard for me to not take the value. And my recommendation to anyone out there is if you're listening in Kansas, I'd take a shot on your Kansas team. And if you want to try to really get a sleeper, I think Arizona's got a legit chance.
Yeah, this conference is wide open. I think there's about 5 teams that I would feel comfortable saying could win the conference championship. And I think what's different this year is just the way that some of the schedules break down. Some of the teams that have bigger odds, I think actually have a relatively more favorable schedule. So KU at plus 950, they have a relatively easier conference schedule this year compared to some of the other teams. They have to go on the road at West Virginia. They host Colorado at the end of the year in Kansas City, and of course Iowa State at the end of the year. But they don't see Utah this year. They don't see Arizona this year. Two of the teams that have some of the most explosive offenses. So I really love KU. Of course, not just being a homer, but plus 950. I think that's an easy one there. I love the Arizona one too. To me, this is a conference kind of like we talked about the Heisman that you could probably throw 4 or 5 out there to kind of cover your ground. And really, if you only need about one of them to hit to feel pretty comfortable that you can at least break even, if not make some. But I mean, I've even had a few people talk about Texas Tech at plus 1400. They're always a weird team. They are starting the year worse than most people give them credit for, and then by midseason they're one of those sneaky teams that finds a way to win, and they find themselves up there. But yeah, Oklahoma State, another good one there. How do you slow down Ollie Gordon? I don't know if you can, outside of hoping he gets an injury if you're playing against him. But yeah, Big 12 wide open. Man, you could just go everywhere. Yeah, don't feel good about the bottom of the conference, of course, but you've got about 6 teams there you could feel good with.
Me either, and that helps the top half, right? Because they can feast on the bottom half. There's going to be some very winnable games. From a non-Kansas fan viewpoint, I'll tell all you Kansas fans listening, you have the best quarterback in the conference with respect to, Cam Rising and Bowman, but you have the best quarterback and you have a favorable schedule. 9.5 to 1 is probably, I agree with Keegan. That would probably be, if I had one play to make where I said I want some value, it's Kansas.
Yeah, and I think, again, as a KU fan, I think we have the best offense as a whole going into the year. I think we'll have another year where we finish top 10 in the country for offense. So, yeah, that's, of course, my bet. I already have that bet out there. But Big 12 is one I think there's a lot of opportunity to make some money. Let's go to another new-look conference, and that's the SEC. The teams that are typically the most dominant in the country year in and year out, always the teams at the top of the college football playoff. Another weird-looking conference with the addition of Texas and Oklahoma. Some teams like Alabama, like we said, no Nick Saban. So how do you perceive them going into the year, and how much of that should be impacted on their play in the field and their where they're sitting in the standings? But when you look across the SEC, first, what stands out to you the most about this conference as in its new look, and who are the teams that you think maybe people aren't giving enough credit to with the number next to them?
So I think the big takeaway here, right, is if you've been betting college football for a long time, is the divisions they're gone. There's no more East. There's no more West. Georgia doesn't get a favorable schedule. It'll be rotating every year. So they're not going to get like the cupcakes that they got. So Georgia's going to have a harder road, right? Bama is going to have a new schedule. Like the addition of Texas and Oklahoma makes this conference very, very difficult because you have 2 possible major stadiums are going in on the road. They are not easy places to win. And normally they are very, very good teams. Oklahoma projected to have a little bit of a down year, but Texas, not one of the top teams in the country. And normally Oklahoma's right there. So these two teams coming in, it just makes this conference even more impossible, right? So it's impressive what Georgia has been doing. Like they are what Alabama was 7-8 years ago, right?
Yeah.
They are going to be the favorite to win it almost every year. Plus 190. Hey, if you want to bet it, I don't blame you. I mean, it's probably the right bet. You're still getting plus money, and they're the best team probably in the country again. They're that good. Their defense is absolutely ridiculous. It could be better than last year. We'll get to that when we talk about them versus Clemson, but their defense is just phenomenal. You're not going to convince me to bet Texas probably most years. They just always find a way to not do it. Like, just look at last year in the college football playoff. They get in by the grace of God, and they find a way to not win. That's what they do. They find a way to let Penix just drop it wherever he wanted to all day. So I'm not going to take them. Bama is not good value. They should be 10-1. I mean, the Nick Tater's gone. It's a whole new look. There's so much unknown there. And we talked about it already. I'm going right to that plus 7-1. I think this is Ole Miss's year. They have the quarterback. They have a good defense. They have a favorable schedule. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, again, that's what I told you at the beginning of this, that Ole Miss is the team I've been looking at all offseason as a team to start giving some more consideration to in some of these futures awards, because that plus 700, that's a pretty good payout right there, with no matter how many units you're putting on it. And again, you got that favorable schedule. I still feel like, not that they have a lot of pressure on them, because I think they have pressure, but I think they're in a position of, hey, we need to prove that we are a top tier team in the SEC. And this is the year to go out and do it. New look SEC. You've got teams like Texas and Oklahoma. I don't like, new team comes into a new conference and expect them to win. I think there's going to be some hiccups there. Not that Texas hasn't played a strong schedule in the years past. They've had the Texas Alabama games before, but I think Ole Miss is that team that you can circle and go, all right, I want to pick a team that I can actually make some good money on, and they're a team for me. If you want to go even sleeper and go big value, again, because of the relatively favorable schedule, I think Missouri at plus 2,000 right there is an interesting one. They probably have their best team since the Gary Pinkel era. Brady Cook is a guy who's going to be a Heisman potential candidate this year. They've got one of the best wide receivers, if not the best wide receiver in the game, in Luther Burden, a defense that has been getting better. And they're a team that, under Eli Drinkowitz, even though he's an oddball coach and kind of an interestingly weird guy, they find ways to be competitive. And I think they're a team that last year surprised people with how they played Georgia. And I think Georgia went into that game, kind of overlooking what Mizzou is. And I think they're a team that also has a little bit of a chip on their shoulder this year. So I don't know how confident I feel with them winning the conference as a whole. I'd probably maybe put them at a 5 or 6 confidence level, but a plus 2,000 odds, and a few things break their way, another team that could sneak in. Maybe the better play with Mizzou is college football playoff that we'll get into. But if you want just a deep sleeper in the conference championship, a team that has the right framework to win it, I think Mizzou's another interesting one.
It's a great call. At 20-1. They're coming off a 10-win season. To your point, they ride that momentum. They have a favorable schedule. And also, hey, remember, it's not East and West anymore. It's top 2 teams. So they can lose to Georgia and still possibly get in that conference championship game, because you're betting who's going to win the championship game. Yes. So they could get in for a rematch and win the rematch, and you're getting the payout. So keep that in mind. The other one I'll just throw out there, look, it's a down year, like I said earlier, but you're never getting Oklahoma at 35-1. So I got no gripe with anyone who wants to throw a flyer on 35-1 Oklahoma.
Yeah, and I think the other thing to keep in mind this year, you and I talked about this before we were diving into the episode, but the college football playoff is really throwing off a lot of these betting angles, because it's gonna change how teams play at the end of the year. If you're already mostly a shoe-in to the college football playoff, how serious are you going to take your conference championship this year versus years past? So, let's say it's Georgia Mizzou in the SEC championship, and Georgia's undefeated at the time and virtually a lock. Mizzou needs the win to get in. Which team's more likely to probably show up with the energy to win that game? It might be Mizzou, because they've got more to play for. Georgia, they're could be playing for the number 1 overall seed and, of course, a bye. But Mizzou or insert Ole Miss or whoever else that's not Georgia might have more of a chip on their shoulder for that game to try and go out and win it. So I think the college football playoff is really going to make the conference championship games quite interesting this year because it just throws so much more uncertainty at that game. And for the teams that aren't the top tier teams already, that might be just enough to really give them an edge once it gets to that time of year. Okay, now let's go to college football playoffs.
I'll throw one while you're scrolling.
Yeah, go for it.
I love Miami to win the ACC, everyone.
Oh, yeah, I guess I left ACC out.
It's all right. They're the fourth of the Power Four for sure.
Yeah, Miami's a good pick there. I'll scroll back down to them real quick. ACC. Yeah, Miami's not bad. I also don't mind Florida State with DJ, but they didn't look too good this last week, so I don't know about that one. Yeah, take your pick there. The ACC probably not going to have a lot of interest in that conference this year. Okay, so yeah, let's go to college football playoffs just to make the playoffs. I'm not going to scroll through all these, but are there any teams you jotted down that you go, man, they just have good odds, good decent payout to make a college football playoff? And this is one where I figured we could probably throw a 4-team parlay in here and kind of see what odds come out.
Yeah, so I'll just throw some out there, and then we can build a parlay, like you said. Love Utah. You're getting plus 190 most places. I think they have a great shot to make it. I just said I like Miami to win the ACC, so they're plus 170 to make the playoff. Notre Dame has a ridiculously favorable schedule after this Saturday, so they're minus 170. If you're going to put a parlay together, I probably am looking at them. You mentioned them earlier. Love Penn State minus 145. Again, maybe throw them in a parlay. I think they got a great shot to make the playoff. Ole Miss minus 165 is my number one spot. I don't see how they don't make the playoff. I think they're wonderful. I think they have a favorable schedule. I brought this up because we both love them. This is Ole Miss's schedule, everyone. You got Furman at home, which they probably paid $1 million to come in and take a beating. So that winner. They're Middle Tennessee at home, winner. At Wake Forest, winner. Georgia Southern now comes in, winner. I mean, they got Kentucky at the end of the month. They're going to be 5-0. They're going to go at South Carolina. It could be a tough game. I think they win. At LSU is the one I got circled. But they get Oklahoma at home. They get Georgia at home. Florida's having a down year, so I'm not worried about at the Swamp. And then they get the Ole Miss. They get Mississippi State at Ole Miss this year. They got a great schedule, and if they win 10 games, they're going to the playoffs, everyone.
Yeah, the only thing that might go against them is, does the committee go, hey, your schedule is weak enough that if you don't win the SEC, we don't feel your case is as strong as some others?
So, Keegan, that's the big unknown this year, right?
Yeah, I know.
We don't know what a committee is going to do. This isn't the NCAA tournament. This isn't March Madness. And there's going to be major SEC bias because there always is. There was in the 14 playoff. So how many teams does the SEC get in? It's going to be fascinating to see when we get to whatever they're going to call it, selection Sunday night or Monday or whatever we're doing. It's going to be interesting to see how many teams get in from these conferences.
Yeah, that's what I love about it. There's so much uncertainty. There's there's going to be plenty of people out there that say they have data to help you, but there's really not a lot of data on how to pick this because it's never been done before. Yes, it's good to look at those teams that are probably going to win your conference championships outright because they obviously are going to earn a spot. But we just said how many of those teams that are the top tier teams are going to take the conference championship as seriously this year if they're already basically a shoe-in to the playoff. So those teams that are those second tier, third tier teams in your conference might have a better shot. So it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be interesting. As I scroll through, if I'm just looking at, a couple singular teams to make the playoff, just betting them on their own, of course, a KU fan, I like Kansas at plus 600 to make college football playoff. Again, they have a very easy schedule, like we talked about, compared to some other programs. So if they make it to the conference championship as a one-loss team, they have an outside shot looking in. Oh, did not mean to click on Wisconsin there. Wisconsin, maybe. They've got a tough schedule. Let's see. Iowa, another team. Again, it's hard for them to put up points, but they could keep games ugly enough to scratch out some random wins. I've heard some people that are much higher on Nebraska this year with Matt Rule. Plus 950 could be interesting. I don't know if they make it deep enough into Big Ten play to earn a spot as an outright team. Any other random teams with good odds that you like. Oh, here we go. Arizona at plus 750 is another one. We talked about Big 12 is just wide open, so they could make some noise there. But how about this? Let's go. You give me yours, and then let's do a 4-team parlay here that we like.
Yeah, look, if you want to go down the board a little bit, I think NC State has an outside chance. I think I like Oklahoma State. Obviously, I said I like them to win the conference. They're plus 650 just to make the playoffs, right? The one I would tell you there's absolutely no value on to me is Oklahoma at plus 450. They're 35-1. Everyone, not great to get 4-1 to make the playoff on someone who's 35-1. What are they, 7th down the board? So I would pass on that. I would not play that. The other one I have circled on my sheet is I would be very shocked if either Boise State or Liberty isn't the smaller school to get in. So 4-1 on either one of those, I would take your pick and take a flyer on either one. One of those two teams is getting in the playoffs.
Yeah, and of course, it's not on my list. And my apologies on my dog there, everybody. He was not happy with the bets Greg was giving out right there, but that's okay.
I think he was saying, I agree. Oklahoma, don't play him, everyone.
Don't play. He was very vocal about that. Don't play Oklahoma. But okay, let's see. You want to do a 4-team or a 6-team parlay to make the playoff?
Well, let's give him a 6-teamer, right? Let's see if we can get half of the teams in. It'll pay a little better. It'll be a little more fun.
So I'm going to start with, and now I got to go and find him, is our Ole Miss team, minus 130. I think that's a decent enough anchor, even at minus odds there, to be a quality pick. Because even if they don't win the SEC, I think they have a good shot as an outside team.
I agree. I would throw Penn State in there to add to the value. I think a 4-teamer is going to pay just fine now that I look at this.
So Penn State minus 140.
I don't think there is a way Georgia and Ohio State don't make the playoffs. So maybe those just get added in to make the payout a little sweeter, and then we add 2 other teams.
Let's see. So if we add Ohio State at minus 650, Georgia minus 600. 50 pays out 200. Why is it not giving me the actual?
It's not giving me the parlay. It's just that's all the singles.
They're not letting you parlay. Okay, so maybe we can't do that. Well, as you're talking about, let me see if I can switch over here to FanDuel and see.
I can place it in New York. I'll give you the odds. In New York, it allows you to. So if you add Georgia, Ohio State, we like Ole Miss, we like
Penn State.
Oh, here's why. Keegan, you got to go. Some of these things are this is a good lesson at DraftKings. When you're on the yes/no, you can't. If you go to college football playoff, the one next to it.
Oh, yeah.
That's how you can parlay them.
All right, let's try that again, everybody. So let's go Ohio State, Georgia, Penn State, Ole Miss. Plus 308. Okay, there we go. Now we're making some progress here. So, yeah, plus 308. If we're doing one unit of $50 there, you're still getting about 200. Decent odds. I say that's not enough. We need to make some more money there.
I agree.
Let's throw in. Let's do 2 more. I guess if you want to make actual like the killing, this is where I would throw in Kansas at plus 600. We don't have to for this bet, but if you throw them in there, you're jumping up to plus 2757. If we want something that might feel a little bit more realistic, let's do the Miami that we talked about. Again, a weaker conference. They have an easy shot at winning that conference as a whole. Even just adding them in there, 50 into 570, that's pretty good. It's not bad at all. What else? You want to try anything else? You like that one?
I like that, but I think, look, if you're looking to look, you can play this anyway. If you're building this at home, you can play 4 of them, play 3 of them. Look at the odds that make you comfortable. Add your Kansas, and for $20, you're going to look at about $1,400 if I'm doing my math right. No more, almost $1,600.
Right there. Add Kansas and Miami, the 2 teams with plus money, and you've got plus 79.02. $20 into 1,600. That's actually, I think, relatively realistic. Penn State, Penn State's the one I'm not as confident in, but I think if they get to the Big Ten championship, they'll have more to play for.
Well, if you want to take Penn State out, you could always throw ND in. You're going to get around the same odds, and ND's got a much easier schedule.
That's true. They got an easier path. You're still at plus 7,000. That's not bad at all. they're still getting a massive payout there. So I mean, we talked about this earlier. I think the college football playoff is where you could make some really insane money this year with a bunch of random 4 to 5 to 16 parlays, because there's just no clear path on how to get there. There's obviously, conference championship winners, and they're going to have the at-large bids just like with March Madness, but there's not a lot of precedent to go off of here to go anywhere. So I think this is where people should spend most of their focus. Of all the futures you could put together is the parlays to make the college football playoff. I've played around with quite a few of my own already and have had several with the plus 400 to plus 8,000 range. I think there's a good shot at a lot of those hitting. But yeah, anything else on the college football to make the college football playoff before we talk championship?
No, I'll throw this out as another tip because we talked about bankroll management. Remember, when you put parlays together like this, they're more of a fun bet. So you think of this as more, hey, I'm going to use some of my profit on this.
Yeah.
When I'm talking $50, I'm talking maybe a 2-team parlay if we're talking parlays, and then mostly straight bets, right? So something like this is a fun bet. Like, hey, I want to take a flyer, see if I can hit $30 and walk away with 3,000.
Yeah. Which that's the fun part of sports betting. If you ask me, those big pay, you want to see the plus 1,000+ odds. Those are fun. But okay, let's go to the championship game. There's a couple ways we can look this. We can go just to make the title game. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Let me go back to the other one. There's the ones you can do of make the college football national title game. But let's just go for the outright winner. So again, never been done before. 12-team playoff. You've got a couple teams that are going to have that first week bye. You've got a playoff bracket that's going to be impossible to predict of who's going to play who and how it's going to get ranked out. So this is, I think, a hard one to put together. And again, outside of Georgia, Ohio State, you can kind of see that the field there is quite wide. So depending on where you're betting, if you can get a Georgia and Ohio State or the field, not bad to take the field if you're trying to make some extra cash instead of the favorites. But yeah, looking at this, it's got a lot of SEC and Big Ten up there. But if you had to pick 2 or 3 teams that aren't maybe surefire payouts, who do you like in this group?
Well, I think everyone's not going to be surprised. 14-1, I'd play Ole Miss if I'm going outside. After that, it gets tough. Would I play Miami at 40-1 with maybe 40-1? I mean, you're getting great return. I think they get in. They win the ACC. They probably get a bye. They got to win 3 games. Utah's another one with that defense, 55-1. But if you're asking me, and I mean, it would be Ohio State for me as the most likely winner, and then down the board a little bit, I'm probably looking at Ole Miss again. How about yourself?
Yeah. This is just such an interesting one. You got to pick a team that you feel confident is going to keep their top play going for a couple extra weeks. This isn't what it was before, where it's just, hey, you play your end of the season, you've got 4 weeks until your bowl game. Now you've got a couple of games in there, so rest is going to play a factor. Guys playing more than 12 games, or they're not used to that. That's going to play a factor. Strategy is going to come up with how do you play different teams. How much do you throw out there in your first round matchup? How much do you save for your round 2 matchup as the teams get tougher? Again, this is another one for me that there's 2 ways you bet. You either go safe and sprinkle money on Georgia and Ohio State because they're the 2 best teams, or you randomly pick 3 or 4 teams outside of that you think have a shot at running deep. This is where, to me, you start getting the March Madness talk of who's that random flyer team out there that probably doesn't have a shot at winning, but because this could get weird, they could find themselves in the national championship. So I don't really know what my play is. Like I said, I love Ole Miss this year, just like you do. I think they're my team to watch consistently all season. I've been an Oregon fan my whole life too, but they just always seem to fall apart in the biggest games. So I don't know if I trust them. But yeah, this is one that I'll probably sprinkle a couple teams. Obviously, I have my KU bet at plus 20,000. So that's my big payout.
Here's, when March Madness, there was a while, right, when you're looking to try to pick a national champion, you were always looking for a team with good guard play, right? That was what was going to get you through the tournament. It's going to be interesting to see, and we're not going to know this year, but in 5 years when we have a little bit of a sample size, maybe 10, is it where in now the college football, you want a quarterback, like the best quarterbacks, the most experienced quarterbacks to get you through these 4 games? So maybe KU does make a run if they get in. They got an experienced quarterback, right? We talked about Miami. Miami's got an experienced quarterback. Cam Rising, does he get in? Like, this is going to be what's fascinating. Do we get the 55-1 shot because they have a 7th-year quarterback who just knows how to manage games in these big moments? Because remember, it's not, to Keegan's point, it's not 2 games now. It's 4. It's 3 or 4, depending when you get in. You get 1 at home, and now you got to win 3 neutral games. It's not home field advantage. It's not the NFL, where you're only going to play one neutral site game. These are all going to be neutral site games, except the first round. So does Georgia win 3 neutral site games? It's a tall task now.
That's why it'll be very curious to see come end of college football playoff how all the sports books themselves shake out of this, because they're going to have probably the most money ever, potentially the most money ever thrown at the different odds for this year.
Not potentially. This will be the biggest handle they've ever seen in the month of December and January, hands down, and it won't be close. And it's going to be interesting to see momentum. Does playing in the first round, now you go to a neutral site and you play Georgia and you got a little momentum going? Do you knock Georgia off now as the 8 seed or it's going to be interesting to see who comes out of that 8-9 game. We're assuming Georgia's the one. I don't know why I'm doing that, but if Georgia is the one, you get Georgia at a neutral site in one of these New Year 6 sites. What if it's the Cotton Bowl and it's Texas?
Yeah,
it's going to be fascinating to see how this all plays out. What if it's the Orange Bowl?
So much you don't know this year. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch. And hey, maybe this is 6-7 weeks in the season, we start to see how things shake out. And that's why I think this is when you definitely got to get your bets in way early, because by week 7, the odds obviously are going to change dramatically. This could be a very intriguing year. I think those that are paying extra close attention and sprinkle their bets accordingly are probably going to come out making quite a killing. That's why I think if I'm looking at all the odds, it's to make the college football playoff, I think is the one I'm going to play the most, because it feels like you've got the strongest chance of getting your bet right versus betting the national championship. Because yes, history would still tell you the 2 best teams are probably the most likely to get there. But yeah, you've got extra games you got to go through, and you've got different, like we said, looking at it, maybe Ole Miss wins the makes it to the SEC championship, doesn't win, Georgia wins, but it's a close game. Okay, so where do you put Ole Miss in the rankings? If they end up as an 8 seed, a 4 seed, whatever the case may be, is that seed number next to the team going to be truly reflective of that team's play? March Madness, that tends to get right most of the time, but this has just never happened before. So that's why, again, if we're talking about national championship odds, to me, I'm looking at going through and doing a parlay on college football playoff as a whole, and then sprinkling money on a couple of teams. And I think you'll come out on top. But I'll have to see if I can do some more digging on Georgia, Ohio State, or the field and see what those numbers are. I didn't pull that up ahead of this, but just another one for some of you local people here. Kansas over under wins is set at 8 on DraftKings -135. I know it's not going to be a huge payout, but I love the over on that. There's no way they win less than they did last year, considering the schedule, unless JD gets hurt again and things just fall apart. To me, this is easily a 9-win team, if not a 10 to an 11-win team. So I love hammering the over there. Missouri's an intriguing one for me at +135 for over 9.5 wins. Again, if you're looking around the area, again, they have a relatively more favorable schedule, so maybe you take a flyer on them there, but you could also sprinkle it on both sides and probably come out almost even there. But any other random future bets, anything you've looked at that you want to throw out there?
Yeah, I wrote. It's funny. You beat me to it. I wrote it down, knowing the Kansas, factor here, and yeah, I wrote exactly what you just said. I don't see how they don't win at least 8 if he stays healthy. Yeah. So I agree. I'd hammer the over on Kansas. I don't know how they don't win 8 games as well. Again, play no injury. Just put that disclaimer out there so you're not, emailing Keegan going, "I hate you guys. They only won 6 games." I'm saying if he's healthy, there's no way they don't win.
Yeah. And we talked about it in our KU football season preview show. This team has a very strong chance of starting the year 6-0 or 7-0. So if that's the case, there's just no way they fall apart. I mean, that K-State matchup, they could be going in 7-0, playing for a spot in the top 10. and the driving seat of the Big 12 championship. So yeah, I'm hammering that one. Obviously, the odds are not as solid, but I feel like that's one you could put more on, knowing that it's going to pay out less than to just throw something at it.
My win totals, I wrote down KU because I wanted to include them on this. So I got 6 of them. I'm trying to go 4-2, and I'll go quick. Ole Miss over 9.5. I don't see them losing more than 2 games. I just don't. I think they're getting a favorable schedule and they're getting tough teams at home. They're going to knock off one of them. I'm not shocked. I will not be shocked if they beat Georgia in November. I won't. I think they're going to have a great chance. I think the line in that game will probably be Georgia, slight favorite, as long as everything plays out the way it should in the first 2 months. And I think Ole Miss will upset them. Oregon under 10.5. I think Ohio State's getting a win there, and I think Oregon will lose a game along the way, just not being used to the travel and playing at some of these stadiums. And on mine, I have them circled at the Wisconsin game. There's no time yet, but if that's at night in Wisconsin in November, I don't see them winning.
Yeah, Wisconsin's an interesting one you bring up there. I think they're going to be a Big Ten team that upsets somebody. I think they're going to be a team that wins a game that they're probably an 8.5 or greater underdog that they pull out a win on and upset a team's chances there for the Big Ten. But last thing we want to get into before we wrap up this episode, again, we're going to try and do these every single week, talk about some of the upcoming games. They will be quick episodes. It'll just be, let's dive into some matchups this week. And of course, we're going to do the same thing with the NFL. So if you do have questions on certain games or you have a game you want us to look at, feel free to send that our way. You can comment it here after this episode. You can hit us up on any of our social medias at KCSA Pod, as you see on the screen below there. You can also send us an email at kcsauthority@gmail.com if you have a game or you want our take or you want us to go break down the data on an upcoming matchup. But let's get into some week 1 matchups. I think we have a couple games on our list here to look at. I'm going to mention them, and then I know you've got a little bit of data on them, and I'll pull them up on my side here. But first one, there's a lot of good games this week. A lot of good week 1 games to look at. First one I jotted down was Clemson versus Georgia. If this will pull back up for me, I'm not going to share the screen on this one, but I'll just get to the game. Clemson at Georgia. Clemson's a 13.5-point underdog, plus 425 on the money line. So Georgia, obviously the heavy favorite. Only reason I put this one down is because it's week 1. It's an early day game. I kind of want to say Clemson covers plus 13.5, but I also feel like this is a game that we should just chalk it up and Georgia just absolutely goes out there and hammers them right away. But any thoughts on this game?
Yeah, so look, it's a lot of points for week 1. To me, it comes down to, can the Clemson offense show signs of life this year against a good defense? Because last year they really didn't. The QB edge, I think, goes to Georgia. They both have experienced quarterbacks, though, so I don't think the moment's going to be too big for either. If the Georgia D is as good as I was saying earlier, it's going to be hard to cover with even 2 scores. For me, this game's probably a hard pass, but if the line moves back to 14.5, which it was at one point, I might throw a little small play on Clemson to see, hey, week 1, maybe they don't click on offense, Georgia that is, as quickly. Maybe Clemson's D is a little better and they can keep it within 2 scores. Maybe they backdoor it late. I wouldn't lay 14.5. I'd be more apt to take it, but it's probably a hard pass for me.
Yeah, this was one. It doesn't have as much juice now as the first time I looked at it, but maybe if you go in and depending on what book you're looking at, kind of tease the line there a little bit to more in your favor. That could be interesting. Just because it's on the screen next to it. The other one I like just as a matchup because I think this team has a big question mark next to them. Nobody really knows what they're going to be. But that's Penn State at West Virginia. Again, another 11 a.m. kickoff. And there's something about Morgantown, football, basketball on the road, 11 a.m. start time. That just always seems to be weird for the opposing team. So this is one that I think is just going to be a fun one to watch. Again, Penn State, I think, has a lot of pressure this year to perform. They're only an 8-point favorite on the road, minus 310 on the money line. West Virginia's plus 250. If you're not a Penn State homer or feeling confident, I actually don't mind this being one of the early season upsets. I don't know if West Virginia has enough to get it done offensively, but I think they're a team that just has a lot of questions to be asked about. I think they're the team that just there's not a strong feeling on what they're going to be. They're a team that's probably going to be by middle to end of the year in Big 12 play better than they're getting credit for to start the year. But I think that's an interesting one to me. I think West Virginia could cover there at just -8. But another one that I'm kind of looking at throughout the week to see where that line ends up at.
All right, so here's how I see it. Penn State's returning their quarterback, right? I think that's always a big thing in college, especially with all the transfer portal stuff. Last year, he led them to 36 points a game, right? That was 12th in the nation. The defense might even be better than they were last year, and they only allowed 13.5 a game. I think they go in there and they roll, and this is an easy one to lay the points. Penn State by 2 scores, easy.
Okay, so we got different take on that one. I don't mind that either because there's probably good money in betting the major upset versus major upset, the going major chalk there that they just come out and blow them out of the water. I don't mind that. Next one, how about Miami versus Florida? Again, another one that's got more marquee name in the title. We know Florida's not as quality of a team this year, but they're only a 2.5 point underdog. So I don't know. Does that say more about Florida or does it say more or less about Miami?
So I was going to end with this one, but we'll go here now. This is my game of the week, everyone. This is the game of the week. Cam Ward, huge upgrade at quarterback for the Canes. He's got a real shot at the Heisman, like we talked about earlier, right? The Miami D always comes out strong. They're one of those teams that sometimes has hiccups in the middle of the season, but they usually come out strong. Miami's win total projection is 9 to Florida's 4.5. I get it's on the road. I get it's in the swamp. I know how hard it is to win in the swamp. Just ask Utah from a couple of years ago when Richardson ran all over the field on them, right? And Utah went in there with a good chance to win, and they were nowhere close. They got blown out. Not happening this year. Canes will win this game. I don't know if it'll be close, but the Canes are going to win the game. I don't see Florida winning this game. It might be within a score, but I am very comfortable putting a big play on Miami laying 2.5 or 3.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. It just, again, kind of like we were saying, two of the teams that I think are going to have a different chip on their shoulder this year, Ole Miss and Miami, I think they have a lot more, I'm going to prove it to you this year mentality. And Miami, maybe you go just money line, you go just spread, maybe you can tease it and go money line and then up the spread, maybe Miami to cover 4.5. And you think it's going to be a little bit bigger there. But yeah, I like Miami because I think Cam Ward is very underrated. But I think the question is, new team, first game of the year, maybe he comes out struggling. But again, Miami, Florida could be an interesting. Anytime you have an in-state game of two in-state teams playing, it's always interesting. But yeah, Florida might still be hanging on to the fact that they're a tough place to play versus that their team is a good team.
So here's another tip. I'm going to hit it because you brought it up, okay? And we'll do this throughout the year when I have these. So a little background, I've been betting for a long time. So I'll throw out some nuggets to everyone. And teasers are fun, right? Everyone loves them. The sports books couldn't be happier that you bet them because you're going to lose more than you win. But here is one rule if you're a teaser bettor, and I play them too sometimes. Never cross 0, ever. So if you want to tease that game, you take Florida and take more points. Never cross 0. You are going to kick yourself more times because one of those teams is going to screw you. Go the other way. Always go the other way. If it's 8 and you want to tease it to 1, go ahead. Just never cross 0. That's my tip on teasers.
I like it there. Let's see. The one I wanted to end with is a bigger matchup. So let's go. Oh man, I have USC, Iowa State, and Colorado State versus Texas. Not that I'm like super pumped about either game, but the Colorado State one interests me just because the way their season went and their head coach loves to make a name for himself in the press conferences. And Texas, I think, is such an overwhelming favorite at -31.5 that I could see Colorado State at least covering, but it is on the road in Texas. So they're primed to get blown out, but something about the intrigue of Colorado State off the field has my attention on this game, but I don't know if I really love it from a betting perspective, but it is one I jotted down.
Here's the way I'd look at it. If Colorado State can score 14, they probably cover, right? It's 32.5. So they can lose 45-14 cover. So can they score 2 times? If I was playing this game, I would take the points before laying them, especially week 1. That's just how I look at it. Because again, it's not Colorado State's not. I mean, they're not a powerhouse, obviously, but can they score 14 points? I think they might be able to, right?
They could at least backdoor cover. Texas goes up big. They put in Arch Manning. Arch Manning struggles, and Colorado State finds a way to score a touchdown late, kick a field goal or something. To get back in it.
USC LSU that you brought up.
Yeah, I guess when I said ISU, I meant LSU. That's my bad there. But yeah.
Here's the money is pouring in, everyone, on LSU, but the lines has dropped, which is always a sign that the public is going one way, but the pros see it a different way. So in this one, believe it or not, and normally you'll learn with me, I'm more on the side of Vegas because those casinos, the casinos weren't built by winners, everyone. Hate to break that to you, but they weren't. But on this one, I'm actually on the side of the public. I don't trust USC at all. Now, I don't trust Brian Kelly anymore either after these last 2 years because he has really stuck it to me. But how many opening games can this guy not show up and coach? I think this one he actually does. I think LSU will pull it out. I think people will forget that USC lost a bunch of people, and I think LSU will do it. Now, both defenses suck. Let's just be honest with you.
Yeah, that's why the over-under is set at 64, which is a pretty high-scoring game for two big programs.
They sucked last year. They'll suck this year. But I'll take the traditional SEC team, right? And that's what I'm going to go with here. But I think we got to end with the game of the week on Saturday night, right? And that's Notre Dame going into Texas A&M.
Yep, I think that'll be one of the most entertaining on the slate for week one. Two teams that, I mean, Notre Dame's probably got more pressure just again because of the way they are. They're refused to join the ranks of college football the way they should be. So they have a lot of pressure anytime they're in a big game. But Texas A&M, I think, is an interesting one too in the SEC. They're a middle SEC team, but they're a top 25 ranked team. They've been really solid on the recruiting side the last couple of years. They've gotten a lot of solid transfers. Texas A&M, I think, is an interesting one. This game's at home Saturday night. All eyes on them. It's only a 3-point spread right now in Texas A&M's favor. But the way the lines are set up, I mean, there's not a lot of confidence either way that A&M or Notre Dame's really going to win. It's almost even. But what do you like about this game from a betting angle?
So the line unfortunately moved since we kind of mapped out what games we were going to take. So 2.5 was the number before. It's moved to 3. Hopefully it goes back to 2.5. Here's the thing. This game's a trap, right? You got Notre Dame number 6 in the nation going to number 20. Okay. A&M's a good team, a very good team. Kyle Field at night, not an easy place to win. Here's the angle that I think is being well overlooked and why I am big. My second favorite play of the week is A&M. Here's why. The quarterback, Riley Leonard, played for A&M's new head coach. He is going to know every tendency he has. And A&M has had one of the better defenses in the country last year. Their front seven is no joke. And he is going to have them prepped for this game. This is not an easy way, I don't think, for Leonard to start against his former coach, especially on the road. Kyle Field at night. I think A&M wins by a score.
Yeah, I think that's interesting what you said there, and we kind of mentioned it throughout this episode too, is new quarterback, new team, new system, week one, tough opponent. That sometimes gives you some more juice on the team that is the home team there. So not only is it new quarterback, new system, new team, it's on the road, tough environment. So I like that play there. Even if you tease Texas A&M a little bit higher, if you think it's more than a 3-point game, -4.5 is still plus 115. So you're already at plus money there, just teasing it up a little bit. So I don't know. That might be one you watch a couple more days before kickoff to see if the line moves at all. But yeah, I think there's some money there you could make.
People are going to bet Notre Dame, everyone. That's what people do. Like Notre Dame's a national team, people bet them. It could come back down to 2.5. But again, everything Keegan said is right. But don't forget again the X factor. The coach of A&M was Leonard's coach at Duke. He knows everything about him. He knows everything about this kid. He's going to have his defense ready.
Shoot, I even like what you're saying that +3.5 -3.5 for A&M, still plus 103. So even if that does tease down a little, or comes back down to 2.5, and you tease it up a half, comes down a half point, you tease it up a half point, you're still coming out with a little bit positive there. So yeah, I think that'll wrap up a week one of college football. Of course, we got all of our futures bets we put in here. And then our week one bets. Again, we're going to try and do this weekly throughout the season in a much shorter, condensed format. We'll give you 2 or 3 games each week we like, a couple angles, maybe throw out a couple parlays on our social medias. And then, of course, we'll roll the same thing into the NFL. But before we get out of here, Greg, any final thoughts on just the college football season as a whole, or what you're looking forward to most from a betting perspective?
I think what I'm looking forward to most from a betting perspective is when we get deeper in the season and these playoff odds, because again, they're going to update every week. So value is going to be out there because people are going to react to one game, not realizing 12 teams make the playoffs. So,
Yeah.
hey, you can find value in October, right? We're going to be able to give you another sleeper in a month or so that has a real chance to sneak in. Or you might have a top team lose a game. Georgia loses a game. If they got upset by Clemson, I still think they're going to make the playoffs, everyone. You're probably going to get them at even money.
Yeah. I like that mentality there. I think you could pick the same team every 4 weeks and just stack their odds over and over and continue to make more money. But yeah, we'll wrap up there. Again, as a reminder, if you are new to the podcast or you are a current subscriber, help us get to 1,000 subscribers over here on YouTube. We're a little over 815 as we speak. Once we get to 1,000 subscribers, we're going to be doing 2 signed jersey giveaways for KU fans out this way, a Devin Neal jersey as well as a Jalen Daniels jersey. So you want to hit that like button right now, this video, this episode, so more people will find it, as well as hit that subscribe button. And if you're not a KU fan, that's okay. Still subscribe, because we're going to have a lot of great content for you this year from college football betting, NFL betting, and of course, we'll get into college basketball later in the year too. So to get the details on this jersey giveaway, once we hit 1,000, we will talk more about that on our social media. So if you haven't done that as well, go follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at KCSA Pod. Well, that will wrap things up for this one. I appreciate you guys taking the time to join us, and hopefully everyone goes out and makes some money this week, and we'll look at doing this again next week. All right, we'll talk to you guys later.